The morning sun peeked through the city buildings as a woman in her early 40s walked briskly down the sidewalk. This wasn't just any businesswoman. This was the CEO of Meridian Financial Group, one of the largest banking institutions in the country. But you wouldn't know it by looking at her today. She never bragged about being the boss, never wore fancy pins or badges announcing her title. She had started as a nobody, just a college graduate with big dreams, and climbed her way to the top through hard work and smart thinking. Today was supposed to be her day off, but some things can't wait. She'd woken up early for her Tuesday yoga class, something she did to keep her mind clear. Now she was dressed in simple black leggings and a comfortable gray sweater, her dark hair tied back in a loose knot. No fancy jewelry, no power suit, just comfortable clothes after her morning stretch. Just a quick stop, she mumbled to herself as she approached the glass doors of one of her bank's downtown locations. She needed to fix something with her personal account before heading to the main office for an unexpected meeting. The bank had only been open for half an hour, and she hoped to be in and out quickly. The security guard nodded politely as she entered, not recognizing her. It was funny, her official portrait hung right there in the lobby, but with her face, free of makeup and dressed in casual clothes, she looked nothing like the polished woman in the framed photograph. In that picture, she wore a crisp blue blazer, her hair perfectly styled, a confident smile aimed at the camera. Today she looked like any other customer. She paused in the lobby, taking in the scene. Something felt off. The line was longer than it should have been this early in the morning. People shifted their weight from foot to foot, checking watches and phones. One man in a construction uniform kept looking at his watch and sighing loudly. An elderly woman leaned heavily on her cane, clearly uncomfortable standing for so long. The CEO frowned. This wasn't right. This branch usually ran like clockwork. It was one of their flagship locations, the one they showed off to investors and featured in company videos. She glanced at the digital display board hanging from the ceiling. Current. Wait time. 23 minutes. 23 minutes? That was unacceptable for any branch, let alone this one. She counted the tellers, only 2 windows open out of 6. Where was everyone? She moved toward the help desk, noticing more signs of trouble. A young mother tried to quiet her fussing toddler while checking her phone, probably worried about being late for work. An older gentleman in a business suit tapped his expensive shoe impatiently while staring daggers at the bank staff. The receptionist, a young woman with tired eyes, was busily typing away at her computer. She didn't look up when the CEO approached. "Excuse me," the CEO said politely. "I was wondering why the wait is so long today." The receptionist barely glanced up. "Staff shortage. Nothing I can do about it." Her tone suggested she'd already answered this question too many times today. The CEO nodded sympathetically. "I understand it must be stressful for you too. I just need to speak with someone about my accounts. Is there a manager available?" Now the receptionist did look up, giving the casually dressed woman a quick once-over. Her eyes lingered on the yoga pants and messy hair. Something in her expression shifted, a subtle change that the CEO had seen countless times before. It was the look people gave when they decided someone wasn't worth their full attention. "You'll need to take a number like everyone else," the receptionist said, sliding a paper ticket across the counter. "Current wait time is about 25 minutes now." The CEO took the ticket, number 43, and looked around. The electronic display showed they were currently serving number 36. "Thank you," she said, then added casually, "Is Mr. Wilson in today?" She knew the branch manager should be working. She'd approved his schedule herself last week during a review of branch operations. "Mr. Wilson only sees appointments and priority customers," the receptionist replied, without looking up. "If you want to make an appointment, you can call the service line or use our app." The CEO nodded and moved to take a seat in the waiting area. As she did, she noticed a man in an expensive suit walk in through the front doors. He approached, the same receptionist who immediately brightened. "Good morning, Mr. Peterson. Here for your usual Tuesday deposit? I'll let Mr. Wilson know you're here." The CEO watched, her expression neutral but her mind racing. The newcomer hadn't been given a number. He hadn't been told to wait. Within moments, a door opened, and out walked a man in his 30s wearing a perfectly pressed suit and a practiced smile. She recognized him immediately, the branch manager she'd mentioned. She'd met him several times during quarterly management meetings. She'd even approved his recent promotion. She watched as he warmly greeted the well-dressed customer, completely oblivious to her presence. They laughed together like old friends before disappearing into a private office. The digital display hadn't changed. Number 36 was still being served. The young mother checked her watch again. The construction worker was now on his phone, apparently, calling in to explain why he would be late. The CEO settled into her seat, took out her phone, and began taking notes. This wasn't at all what she expected for her Tuesday morning, but maybe it was exactly what needed to happen. Sometimes the best way to understand a problem was to experience it firsthand. And right now, she was experiencing exactly what many of her customers did every day. She just hadn't known it until now. 15 minutes passed. The CEO kept watching and taking notes on her phone. The elderly woman with the cane had finally been called to a teller window. The construction worker had given up and left, shaking his head in frustration. The digital board now showed they were serving number 39. At this rate, it would be at least another 20 minutes before her turn. She noticed the branch manager, emerging from his office, now escorting the well-dressed customer back to the lobby. They shook hands, all smiles. The manager, let's call him Thomas, patted the man on the shoulder like an old friend. Instead of returning to his office, Thomas approached another customer, a woman in business attire with expensive-looking shoes. Though she had arrived after the CEO and also should have had a number, Thomas greeted her warmly and led her directly to a desk, bypassing the line entirely. The CEO glanced down at her simple clothes, then back at the business-dressed woman. The message couldn't be clearer. Appearance determined service level. She had seen enough. She stood up and approached the reception desk again. "Excuse me," she said politely but firmly. "I have an important meeting soon. Would it be possible to speak with the branch manager quickly? It's a simple account question." The receptionist looked up with undisguised annoyance. "Ma'am," she said, raising her voice slightly so others could hear. "Everyone here has important things to do. Mr. Wilson only assists our priority customers. The tellers will help you when your number is called." A few people in the waiting area looked over, some with sympathy, others seeming pleased that someone was saying what they all felt. "I understand," the CEO replied calmly. "But I believe Mr. Wilson would want to speak with me. Could you please let him know I'm here?" The receptionist's expression hardened. "As I already told you, Mr. Wilson is busy with priority clients. Unless your accounts meet our premium threshold, you'll need to wait like everyone else." "And what is that threshold exactly?" the CEO asked, genuinely curious how her own employees defined priority. The receptionist blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "That's confidential information," she replied stiffly. "I see," said the CEO. She pulled out her business card, the one with the company logo and her title clearly printed under her name. "Would you please give this to Mr. Wilson and tell him I'd like a word?" The receptionist took the card with a sigh, glanced at it, and froze. Her eyes widened as she looked from the card to the casual woman standing before her. I'll get him right away," she stammered, nearly knocking over her chair as she stood. Thomas was still chatting with the business-dressed woman when the receptionist rushed over and whispered urgently in his ear. He frowned, took the card, and looked across the lobby. His face changed instantly, recognition, shock, and fear washing over it in quick succession. He excused himself and hurried over, straightening his tie as he approached. "Ma'am," he called out loud enough for everyone to hear, "there seems to be some confusion. Please come this way. We can assist you immediately." The CEO stayed where she was. "There's no confusion, Thomas. I've been watching how this branch operates when you think no one important is looking." Thomas glanced nervously at the other waiting customers, all of whom were now watching with interest. "Perhaps we should discuss this in my office," he suggested, quietly. "Why?" asked the CEO. "These people have been waiting patiently while you choose who deserves attention based on how they're dressed. I think they deserve to hear this." A murmur went through the waiting area. People were nodding, some even smiled approvingly at this woman who was saying what they had all experienced. "What seems to be the problem here?" Thomas asked, trying to sound authoritative despite his obvious discomfort. "The problem," the CEO replied calmly, "is that I've been watching this branch for almost 30 minutes now. In that time, I've seen you personally assist 2 people who arrived after me, simply because they looked woo." 15 minutes had passed in the bank, and the CEO kept watching everything around her. She took notes on her phone, capturing details about wait times and customer interactions. The elderly woman with the cane had finally been called to a teller window after struggling to stand for so long. The construction worker had given up entirely, checking his watch one last time before walking out, shaking his head in frustration. The digital board now showed they were serving number 39. At this rate, it would be at least another 20 minutes before her turn with number 43. Just then, she noticed the branch manager emerging from his private office, now escorting the well-dressed customer back to the lobby. They were laughing together, exchanging jokes like old friends. The manager, the man in charge of this whole branch, patted the wealthy-looking man on the shoulder before saying goodbye. But instead of returning to his office, the manager looked around the lobby and approached another customer, a woman in an expensive-looking business outfit with designer shoes. Though this woman had arrived after the CEO and should have been given a number just like everyone else, the manager greeted her warmly and led her directly to a desk, completely skipping the line. The CEO glanced down at her simple yoga clothes, then back at the business-dressed woman who was getting special treatment. The message couldn't be clearer. The way you dressed determined how you were treated. She had seen enough. After watching for nearly half an hour, she stood up and approached the reception desk again. "Excuse me," she said politely but firmly. "I have an important meeting soon. Would it be possible to speak with the branch manager quickly? It's just a simple account question." The receptionist looked up with obvious annoyance. "Ma'am," she said, raising her voice slightly so others could hear, "everyone here has important things to do. The manager only assists our priority customers. The tellers will help you when your number is called." Several people in the waiting area looked over, some with sympathy, others seeming pleased that someone was finally saying something about the unfair treatment. "I understand," the CEO replied calmly, "but I believe the manager would want to speak with me. Could you please let him know I'm here?" The receptionist's expression hardened. "As I already told you, he's busy with priority clients. Unless your accounts meet our premium threshold, you'll need to wait like everyone else." "And what exactly is that threshold?" the CEO asked, genuinely curious how her own employees defined who was important enough for good service. The receptionist blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "That's confidential information," she replied stiffly. "I see," said the CEO. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small leather card holder. From it, she removed her business card, the one with the company logo and her title clearly printed under her name. "Would you please give this to the manager and tell him I'd like a word?" The receptionist took the card with a sigh, glanced at it, and froze. Her eyes widened as she looked from the card to the casually dressed woman standing before her. She looked at the card again, then back at the woman. I'll get him right away," she stammered, nearly knocking over her chair as she stood up. The manager was still chatting with the well-dressed woman when the receptionist rushed over and whispered urgently in his ear. He frowned, taking the small business card from her hand. As he read it, his expression changed completely. He looked across the lobby, scanning faces until he spotted the woman in yoga clothes. His face transformed instantly, recognition, shock, and fear washing over it in quick succession. He quickly excused himself from the customer he was helping and hurried across the lobby, straightening his tie as he approached. "Ma'am," he called out loud enough for everyone to hear, "there seems to be some confusion. Please come this way. We can assist you immediately." The CEO stayed exactly where she was. "There's no confusion at all," she replied clearly. "I've been watching how this branch operates when you think no one important is looking." The manager glanced nervously at the other waiting customers, all of whom were now watching with interest. "Perhaps we should discuss this in my office," he suggested quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Why? Asked the CEO. These people have been waiting patiently while you choose who deserves attention based on how they're dressed. I think they deserve to hear this conversation. A murmur went through the waiting area. People were nodding. Some even smiled approvingly at this woman who was saying what they had all experienced but never dared to mention. What seems to be the problem here? The manager asked, trying to sound authoritative despite his obvious discomfort. The problem, the CEO replied calmly, is that I've been watching this branch for almost 30 minutes now. In that time, I've seen you personally assist 2 people who arrived after me, simply because they looked wealthy. I've watched your receptionist dismiss customers based on their appearance, and I've counted 4 empty teller windows while your customers wait nearly half an hour for basic service. The manager swallowed hard. There must be some misunderstanding. We prioritize based on account types, not appearance, the CEO finished for him. Then why did you walk right past me earlier? We've met several times at quarterly meetings. My picture hangs on that wall. She pointed to the leadership photographs near the entrance. But because I'm in yoga clothes, today I'm suddenly invisible? The manager's face had gone pale as the truth of her words sank in. Some of the waiting customers were nodding in agreement. Others were pulling out their phones, perhaps recognizing the potential viral moment unfolding before them. I didn't recognize you, he stammered. Your photo is more professional. Exactly my point, the CEO replied. And if that's how you treat me when I'm not dressed for success, how do you treat everyone else who comes in here? The construction worker who just left because he couldn't wait any longer to get to his job? The young mother trying to manage a fussy child while you help the man in the expensive suit first? The manager looked around nervously. Ma'am, we should really discuss this privately in my office. I'm not here as a secret shopper or to trick you, she said firmly. I genuinely needed banking services this morning, but what I've seen is completely unacceptable. Our company policy is crystal clear. Every customer deserves respect and efficient service, regardless of what they're wearing or how big their account is. More customers were openly watching now. The receptionist seemed to be trying to disappear into her chair. Let me show you something, the CEO continued, pulling out her phone. She opened the bank's app and logged in, then turned the screen toward the manager. His eyes widened when he saw the balance displayed. Her personal accounts held considerably more than what most priority customers would have. I could have mentioned this right away, she said quietly. But it shouldn't matter. The construction worker's money is just as good as mine. The young mother's time is just as valuable. That's what banking is supposed to be about. Service for everyone, not just for people who look important to you. The manager's professional mask was crumbling fast. Please, let's discuss this in my office, he begged, his voice barely above a whisper now. The CEO nodded. Fine. But first, she turned to address the waiting customers. I apologize to all of you for the poor service today. This is not how our bank is supposed to operate. I promise you that changes will happen immediately. As she followed the manager to his office, the waiting customers broke into spontaneous applause. As soon as the office door closed behind them, the branch manager's confident facade completely crumbled. His shoulders slumped, and he nervously gestured for the CEO to take a seat across from his desk. His hand trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie. I can explain everything, he began, speaking rapidly. His voice had lost the authoritative tone he'd used in the lobby. Now it was higher-pitched, almost pleading. We've been short-staffed all week because of budget cuts from regional. They told us to focus on high-value clients to improve our quarterly numbers. I was just following directions from above. The CEO sat down calmly, placing her purse beside her. Unlike the manager, she seemed completely composed, despite the unexpected turn her morning had taken. She studied him for a moment before responding. Which regional manager specifically told you to ignore regular customers and judge people by their clothes? She asked. The manager hesitated, his eyes darting around as if searching for the right answer. Well, not exactly in those words, but Because I meet with all regional managers weekly, she interrupted gently. And our latest directive was to improve wait times across all branches. Nothing about prioritizing based on appearance. It's not exactly official policy, the manager admitted, a bead of sweat now visible on his forehead. But everyone knows that's how you keep the important customers happy. The big accounts are what matter to the bottom line. The CEO shook her head, slowly. That's where you're wrong. Do you know what percentage of our bank's business comes from regular everyday customers? The construction workers, the young parents, the seniors on fixed incomes. The manager looked down at his hands, which were now fidgeting with a pen. I'm guessing a lot? 87%, she replied. The regular people you've been pushing aside account for the vast majority of our business. They might not have millions individually, but together they're the backbone of this bank. She leaned forward slightly. Let me tell you a story. When I was first starting out, fresh out of college, I went to a bank to open my first checking account. I had on jeans and a t-shirt because I'd been moving into my apartment. The bank staff made me wait almost an hour while they helped better dressed people who came in after me. The manager looked up, perhaps sensing a glimmer of hope in this personal story. When I finally got help, the CEO continued, the banker suggested a basic account with high fees and no benefits. He didn't ask about my job or my plans, he just saw a young person in casual clothes and assumed I wasn't worth his time. She paused, letting her words sink in. Do you know what happened next? The manager shook his head. I walked out, went to the bank across the street, and was treated with respect. That second bank got my first paycheck, my first car loan, my first home mortgage, and eventually, my business accounts when I started climbing the corporate ladder. All because someone took the time to see me as a person, not just as what I was wearing. The manager's face showed he understood the point of her story. Today, she continued, you were that first banker. You saw clothes, not people. And it's not just me you misjudged. It was everyone out in that lobby. She pulled out her phone and made a call. It's me, she said when someone answered. I'm at the downtown branch. I need you to come over right away. Bring the paperwork for a management change. And send someone who can take over branch operations immediately. She ended the call and looked back at the manager. His face had gone completely white. You're firing me? Just like that? Over one mistake? This isn't about one mistake, she replied calmly. While waiting, I observed how you and your staff treated at least 7 different customers. This isn't an isolated incident. It's a culture you've created in this branch. A culture that goes directly against our core values. The manager's shoulders slumped further. My family depends on this job. My house payment. You'll receive the standard severance package, she interrupted. 4 weeks' pay. Health insurance through the end of the month and a recommendation if you learn from this experience. She stood up. This bank was founded on the principle that everyone deserves respect and fair service. My grandfather started this company with that belief, and I won't watch it disappear on my watch. The manager looked up, surprise evident on his face. Your grandfather founded the bank? The CEO nodded. He started with one small branch in 1978. He was an immigrant who came to this country with almost nothing. The first few banks he approached for a business loan dismissed him because of his accent and his second-hand suit. She walked toward the window overlooking the lobby, where customers were still waiting. He never forgot how that felt. When he finally got his chance and opened this bank, he made a promise that every person who walked through the door would be treated with dignity, regardless of what they were wearing or how much money they had. She turned back to face the manager. That promise is written into our company values, the values you agreed to uphold when you accepted your position. I understand, the manager said quietly. I really do. But people make mistakes. I deserve a second chance. Perhaps, the CEO acknowledged. But not here, not now. The damage is done. Your team follows your example and you've taught them to judge people by appearances. That needs to change immediately. There was a knock at the door, and a woman in a business suit entered holding a folder. Behind her was an older man the CEO seemed to recognize. "Thank you for coming so quickly," the CEO said, greeting them both. The woman with the folder looked uncomfortable as she glanced between the CEO and the branch manager. "I have the paperwork you requested," she said, handing over the folder. The CEO turned to the older man. "This is our regional operations director. He'll be taking over this branch temporarily until we can find a permanent replacement." She looked back at the branch manager. "I need your keys and access card. You can collect your personal belongings, but you need to leave the premises within the next 30 minutes. The manager slowly reached into his pocket and removed a key ring. He placed it on the desk, then unpinned his ID badge from his lapel and set it beside the keys. Without a word, he stood and walked to the coat rack to retrieve his jacket. Before leaving the office, he paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I am sorry." The CEO nodded. "I believe you. Use this experience to grow. That's all any of us can do when we make mistakes." After he left, she turned to the operations director. "I want all staff gathered in the break room in 15 minutes. We need to talk about what happened today and how things are going to change." 15 minutes later, the CEO stood in the employee break room facing a group of nervous bank staff. Some avoided eye contact, staring at the floor or their hands. Others whispered among themselves, casting quick glances at the CEO and the operations director who stood beside her. "I'm sure by now all of you have heard what happened this morning," the CEO began, her voice calm but firm. "Your branch manager is no longer with the company." A wave of whispers spread through the room. One young teller raised her hand hesitantly. "Ma'am, is it true you came in dressed in regular clothes and he didn't recognize you?" The CEO nodded. "Yes, that's true. I was in workout clothes after my morning yoga class. But that's not why he lost his job today." She looked around the room, making eye contact with each employee. He lost his job because he created a culture where people are treated differently based on how they look or what they wear. A culture where some customers are considered more important than others. She walked to a table where someone had left a printed copy of the bank's mission statement. Picking it up, she held it for everyone to see. "This says we promise equal respect and service to all, not just to well-dressed people, not just to rich people, to everyone who walks through our doors." A middle-aged woman at the back of the room spoke up. "But we were told to prioritize premium accounts. That's what all the recent training was about." "Prioritizing premium accounts means offering them additional services they're eligible for," the CEO clarified. "It doesn't mean ignoring other customers or making them wait while you help someone who looks wealthier. And it certainly doesn't mean judging who might have a premium account based on their clothes." She set the paper down and moved closer to the group. "Let me ask you all something. Have any of you ever been treated poorly somewhere just because of how you were dressed or how you looked?" Almost every hand in the room went up slowly. "How did it make you feel?" "Embarrassed," one teller answered quietly. "Angry," said another. "Like I didn't matter," added the receptionist who had been at the front desk earlier. She looked especially uncomfortable. The CEO nodded. "Exactly. And did you want to go back to that place again?" Heads shook around the room. "This isn't just about doing the right thing morally. It's about good business. When we make customers feel unimportant, they leave. They tell their friends about their bad experience. They choose our competitors next time." The operations director stepped forward. "Starting tomorrow, we're making some changes to this branch. First, we'll have all windows open during peak hours. No more half-hour waits. Second," the CEO continued, "we're eliminating any unofficial priority service practices. Customers get helped in the order they arrive, period. If someone needs special assistance, elderly customers, parents with young children, people with disabilities, that's different. That's about meeting needs, not about judging value." She noticed the receptionist looking particularly worried. "I know some of you are concerned about your jobs right now. Let me be clear. I'm not here to fire anyone else today. This is a fresh start." The receptionist's shoulders relaxed slightly, though she still looked anxious. "But," the CEO continued, "I do expect every person in this room to reflect on how you've been treating customers. Ask yourself honestly, have I been judging people based on how they look? Have I been giving better service to some than others? The break room was completely silent now. Tomorrow morning, before we open, we're going to have a special training session right here. We'll talk about unconscious bias, those automatic judgments we all make without realizing it. We'll practice how to provide excellent service to everyone, regardless of appearance. She looked at her watch. Right now, though, we have customers waiting. So let's get back out there and give them the service they deserve. As the staff filed out, the CEO stopped the receptionist with a gentle touch on her arm. Could you stay for a moment? When they were alone, the receptionist looked close to tears. I'm so sorry about this morning. I never would have spoken to you like that if I'd known. That's exactly the point, the CEO interrupted gently. You shouldn't speak to anyone like that, whether they're the CEO or not. Every person deserves respect. The receptionist nodded, looking down. I know. It's just, we get so much pressure about numbers and efficiency. Sometimes it feels easier to focus on the customers who might have bigger accounts. I understand the pressure, the CEO replied. But I saw how you treated the elderly woman with the cane. You barely looked at her when you handed her a number. Same with the construction worker who eventually left. He comes in every Friday to cash his paycheck, the receptionist admitted quietly. He's always polite, but the manager said he takes too much time and doesn't keep a big enough balance to be worth the effort. The CEO shook her head. That's exactly the kind of thinking that needs to change. That construction worker might be saving to buy a house someday. He might start his own business. Or maybe he'll just remain a loyal customer who tells his friends and family about us. Either way, he deserves our respect. She paused, studying the young woman's face. I sense you know this isn't right. That's a good start. The receptionist looked up, surprised. You're not firing me? No, but I am challenging you to do better, starting right now. The CEO walked with her back to the front desk. The lobby was still full of waiting customers, though there were more teller windows open now. The operations director had clearly gotten things moving. Make an announcement, the CEO suggested. Tell everyone we apologize for the wait and we're working to help everyone as quickly as possible. The receptionist hesitated, then picked up the microphone for the public address system. Attention customers. We sincerely apologize for the long wait times today. We've opened additional windows to serve you faster. Thank you for your patience. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The CEO moved through the lobby, stopping to speak with several waiting customers. She introduced herself, not as the CEO, but simply as someone who worked for the bank and asked about their experience. She listened to their complaints and suggestions, jotting notes in her phone. One elderly gentleman mentioned he'd been banking there for over 20 years. Used to know everyone by name, he said. Now they just rush me through like I'm taking up space. Except today. Today the young man helping me actually asked how my grandkids were doing. First time that's happened in years. The CEO made a note to find that particular teller later and commend him. As she prepared to leave, she noticed the construction worker who had left earlier coming back through the front doors. She watched as he approached the reception desk. The receptionist looked up and, instead of the dismissive glance she'd given him before, smiled and greeted him by name. I'm so sorry about the wait earlier. We can help you right away now. It was a small moment, but it represented exactly the kind of change the CEO had hoped to see. Sometimes, she thought, leadership wasn't about grand gestures or complex strategies. Sometimes it was about reminding people of the simple values that mattered most. News about what happened at the downtown branch spread through the company like wildfire. By the end of the day, employees from all levels were talking about how the CEO had shown up in workout clothes and fired a branch manager on the spot for poor customer service. Like any story passed from person to person, some details got exaggerated. Some people claimed the CEO had been thrown out of the bank. Others said she'd arrived in pajamas as a test. The truth was somewhere in between, but the message was clear. To everyone, treat all customers with respect no matter what they're wearing. The next morning, the CEO called an emergency virtual meeting with all branch managers across the country. Nearly 100 faces appeared on her screen, looking nervous and attentive. You've all probably heard rumors about what happened yesterday, she began. looking directly into the camera. "I want to tell you the real story." She explained exactly what had happened, how she'd stopped at the branch after yoga, been ignored because of her casual clothes, and witnessed other customers receiving the same treatment. "This isn't about one manager or one branch," she said. "This is about who we are as a company. My grandfather started this bank because he believed everyone deserves respect and fair service. That's still true today." She leaned closer to the camera. "Starting next week, we're implementing mandatory training for every employee. This isn't about political correctness. This is about good business. When we judge customers by their appearance, we're not just being unfair, we're making poor business decisions." One branch manager raised his hand. "But what about our targets? For premium accounts? Regional keeps pushing us to focus on high-value customers." "High value doesn't mean well-dressed," the CEO replied firmly. "Some of our wealthiest customers come in wearing jeans and t-shirts, and the customer in work boots might be saving for a business loan that could make them our biggest client next year." She continued, "More importantly, our business depends on all customers, not just the wealthy ones. The majority of our profits come from regular people making regular transactions. Together, they're the backbone of this bank." Over the next month, the CEO made surprise visits to branches across the city, sometimes dressed in business attire, sometimes in casual clothes. She sat in lobbies, stood in lines, and watched how employees treated different types of customers. Most branches performed well. A few didn't. Changes were made where needed. She also set up a special email address where customers could share their experiences, good or bad. The responses poured in, many describing years of feeling judged or dismissed based on their appearance. "I stopped wearing my work clothes to the bank because the tellers would barely look at me," wrote one construction foreman. "I manage a crew of 30 people and have a healthy retirement account, but when I come in with dust on my boots, I'm treated like I don't matter." Another customer wrote, "As a young woman, I'm always ignored when I go to financial institutions. Thank you for taking this seriously." The CEO shared these stories, without names, in the company newsletter, helping employees understand the real impact of their behavior on real people. 3 months after the incident, customer satisfaction scores had risen by 17%. The downtown branch, now under new management, had become a model for excellent service. A simple sign now stood in every branch lobby: "Every customer deserves our best." No exceptions. As for the former branch manager, his story didn't end when he walked out of the bank that day. After the initial shock and anger wore off, he began to reflect on his actions. 6 months later, he wrote a long email to the CEO. "What happened that day was the wake-up call I needed," he wrote. "I've spent these months thinking about how I judged people based on superficial things. I've taken courses on my own about unconscious bias and customer service. I understand now what I did wrong." The CEO read his message thoughtfully. After checking references and confirming he had indeed been taking courses, she forwarded his information to a colleague at a partner company. "This person made a serious mistake," she wrote in her recommendation, "but has worked hard to learn from it. Everyone deserves a second chance when they truly change." The former manager was hired in a customer service role, not management, with the understanding that he would build trust from the ground up. On the 1-year anniversary of the incident, the downtown branch held a Customer Appreciation Day. The lobby was filled with people from all walks of life: construction workers and corporate executives, retirees and young families. Everyone received the same warm welcome, regardless of what they were wearing. The CEO arrived unannounced, this time dressed in business casual attire. She moved through the crowd, chatting with customers and employees alike. No one treated her differently from anyone else, exactly as it should be. She overheard a teller complimenting an elderly woman on her handmade sweater, and another employee kneeling down to speak with a small child at eye level. These small moments of genuine human connection were exactly what she had hoped to see. In a quiet corner, she spotted a familiar face, the receptionist who had been so dismissive a year ago. Now she was patiently helping a young man in worn jeans fill out a loan application for his first car. The CEO watched as the receptionist pointed out something on the form and they both laughed. Later that afternoon, the CEO was interviewed for a business magazine. The reporter had heard about the incident and wanted details for a feature story. "We've all seen those social experiments where someone famous dresses down and gets poor service," the reporter said. "But you actually did something about it. What made you take such immediate action?" The CEO thought for a moment. "It wasn't about me being treated poorly. It was about watching other customers, everyday people, being dismissed because they didn't look important. That goes against everything this bank stands for." When asked about the dramatic improvement in customer satisfaction, she smiled. "It's simple, really. We treat every customer like they could be the CEO." When the reporter looked confused, she added, "Because any customer might be, or they might be a future CEO, or they might tell 20 friends about their experience. In the end, it doesn't matter who they are or what they're wearing. What matters is that they chose our bank, and that choice deserves respect." The story became legendary in banking circles, a powerful reminder that leadership isn't about fancy titles or corner offices. It's about holding on to your values even when no one thinks you're watching. And sometimes the best way to see if those values are being upheld is to leave the suit at home and stand in line like everybody else.